Hi, this is Millie from the Albany Public Library. In my last video, I discussed some Spanish language learning podcasts for children, and now I'm going to talk about some for older kids, adults, and teens. So, one of my favorite Spanish language learning podcasts is the Duolingo podcast. We promote Duolingo through our library resource page already as an excellent language learning tool, and their podcast supports it really nice. It's at an intermediate level, very approachable, 20 minutes in length, and the stories are human interest, so they're really compelling. They're also told by native Spanish speakers from all over Latin America, so you're exposed to different accents, and themes include sports, crime, history, and lost loves. You really feel invested in the characters, and the narration in English is provided by Martina Castro, who is the co-founder of NPR's Radio Ambulante. Another podcast that's great is Spanish Pod 101 out of Lima, Peru. It's hosted by a Peruvian disc jockey and a Spanish language teacher from Canada. It's an approachable introduction to the language for beginning to intermediate language learners with clear guidelines on usage. Universal Spanish is taught, so it's Spanish you can take anywhere in the world and use, which is great. And there are audio examples of native language speakers from different regions. The videos are taught in addition to audio lessons, so there are some videos on their channel that you can watch as well. And it's a little hard to follow the correct episode order, but if you stick with it, it's worth it to get to the content. So, moving on, Spanish Obsessed is a podcast for beginning to advanced learners. It's 15 minutes each per episode, and for teen and adult learners. It's a charming couple from England and Colombia who teach lessons in a standard sort of format for complete beginners, emerging beginners, intermediate, and advanced learners. So you can choose the series that is at the level you're ready for and just dive right in at an appropriate level of language. And the conversational chemistry of the couple really moves things along. So even though it's a little bit dry sometimes, they have a good spark that keeps it going. And the lessons start out a little bit dry, but as you get to more advanced content, they get really interesting. Okay, so my favorite podcast for Spanish language learners for adults and teens is Españolistos. And that is a guy from Texas and a woman from Colombia who provide entertaining conversation and banter around different topics such as Colombian history and culture, current world happenings, and engaging interviews with native Spanish speakers from around Latin America. One of the things I enjoy is that the gal kind of gently corrects the errors of the guy from Texas who is a Spanish language learner. She grew up as a native speaker, so she corrects his course a little bit. And they are a little bit longer, so each episode is around 30 minutes. A good podcast, if you want to catch up on some news at the same time as you learn your Spanish, is News in Slow Spanish Latino. They do have a Spanish from Spain as well. I like Latino because more of that Spanish is spoken around this area. Weekly news bulletins are presented in slow, clear Spanish, so it's easy to hear the distinct words, and vocabulary is used that's appropriate for an intermediate language learner. The news topics focus on current events from all around the world, but there is a particular focus on Latin American history, current events. Now, if you are interested in learning Castilian Spanish, which is the Spanish spoken in Spain, such as if you are going to prepare for a trip overseas, you might enjoy the podcast Coffee Break Spanish. It is Castilian Spanish taught by a team out of Scotland. Complete beginners can start comfortably with the first lesson and work all the way through the series. The early episodes take a traditional language learning format as you learn basic phrases from the show's host, who has a charming Scottish accent, and along with a fellow Spanish language learner. Later episodes have exciting adventure storylines that actually continue across episodes, so you'll get to hear a cumulative, exciting story build as you continue tuning in. And the stories are told in Spanish with interludes of English that support story comprehension and vocabulary building. And that is also a great podcast for teens and adults. So that is all I have to share with you today. Thank you very much.